Ahoy hoy gang, if this is your first time with us, welcome! And if you're joining us from a previous video, hey, we love to see it and I hope you're doing well. It's Season 5! How do you follow up one of the greatest season finales of all time that perfectly encapsulated what your show represents? How do you maintain any amount of momentum? You steer all in on what people loved of the earlier seasons and keep throwing anything and everything at the wall. Season 5 is a lot, but not once could I ever say it's boring. So, does Season 5 stand up? Well, there's only one way to find out and 3 questions that must be asked. What worked, what failed, what avian invasions will be curtailed? I feel so alive! Because we're talking Season 5. It's our season premiere, and it's a Gene and Courtney episode. Yay! The episode is pseudo-told in flashbacks, but it really just boils down to Gene and Courtney competing to have their musical performed in front of the entire school. Gene promotes a musical based around the Christmas classic Die Hard, and Courtney wants to do Working Girl with her dad, even promising Carly Simon would show up. Courtney ends up getting the musical, and Gene decides to put on a rogue competing musical in the basement boiler room. Oh wow, something happens and the musicals get stalled, and Gene decides to work together with Courtney, and they put on the ultimate fusion of workplace comedy and whatever Working Girls is. I want to say Star Wars in Manhattan? Harrison Ford was in both movies. That's about it. It's a very predictable episode, but it uses the entire school, shows the kids being kids, and comes in guns a-blazing with all the musical elements you can handle. Even the credits have Carly Simon just showing up literally for the end bit. You could see any other show do this story and have it be a perfectly decent episode of the series, but obsBurgers just takes it that extra mile. It's a Gene and Courtney episode that actually works for both their characters. Courtney isn't the absolute worst this episode, and there's just so much forward momentum that it feels like a proper season premiere. It is so upbeat and honestly one of the best Gene episodes ever. I love his relationship with the music teacher, they're just the best. Genuinely, any critiques I have are minimal. Yeah, there's a Tina subplot about fighting to get a role, and it's just kinda whatever. But the A story is just so all-encompassing it doesn't really matter. This isn't a complex episode, but it has so much passion in it you're excited to see what they have in store for the rest of the season. Work Hard or Die Trying Girl is a boiler room belted out 9 out of 10. It's our Halloween episode, woo! Tina thinks she's dating a ghost in a box and ghost hunters come to Bob's and do ghost hunts while eating. I was genuinely so excited to see what else they had. So excited. I don't know. Andre Royo from The Wire guest stars again. Jordan Peele's back. Woo. Oh look, Tammy wrote that the ghost is now dating Tammy because she doesn't want to let Tina have anything, even if it's just a ghost boyfriend. Tammy is just not a good person, and I would argue just genuinely kind of dumb. Tammy as a character farts, needs all the attention, and actively will sabotage anyone with no amount of remorse. She'll apologize if she's told to, but will never really mean it. There's only so many ways you can tell a story with a character like Tammy and have it be any kind of entertaining. This is not one of those times. I'm sure it's personal opinion, but Tina and the Real Ghost is honestly one of my least favorite episodes of the season, and arguably my least favorite Halloween episode overall. It's really only somewhat Halloweenish in the final bit in the crypt, which is a great scene, and Tina does have some sort of self-awareness by the end, but it just feels like too little too late. The jokes are fine, obviously the ghost hunting part is the highlight, but overall it's a perfectly missable experience. Even the ghost hunting, it just feels so predictable. Oh, they're ghost hunting and attracting business. Oh, they're eating for free. They get to leave, and when they get asked to pay their bill, they pretend that they were ghosts this entire time. Ha 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 ha. It just doesn't stick the landing. You can see what they were going for, but it feels like a very held back Halloween episode. Tina and the Real Ghost is a box ghost be wearing 6 out of 10. Teddy thinks he and Bob are best friends, and Bob is terribly guilty and thinks that he's slowly making Teddy more and more unhealthy, so he decides to ban Teddy from eating his burgers. The two end up going to a stuntman training camp to try and help Teddy get into shape, and Bob admits that he doesn't consider the two friends breaking Teddy's heart and sending him to go finish a burger challenge that Bob has to shut down and show that he does in fact care about his friend. It's, again, a very predictable formula, but it's nice to have a Teddy-centric A-story. He hasn't had a ton, but they'll start becoming more and more commonplace. Teddy is just desperate for anyone to acknowledge him and just wants to be a friend. He's a lot, but he loves a lot too. And you really start to appreciate Bob and Teddy's awkward friendship for what it is, and even if the premise is basic, the jokes are still phenomenal, and it's a genuinely great A story, even bringing back Tim Heidecker. Oh, and the B story? The kids make a frozen floor in the freezer and compete in a Thunderdome-esque glacial gladiatorial smackdown, all watched over by Linda. Love it. Love everything about it. Like, Linda isn't immediately shutting anything down, is actively encouraging and even getting swept up in the kids' antics. Linda genuinely loves her kids, and this whole episode just has so much heart under a really bizarre premise. And while we'll get more into Teddy later on and his fears of being taken away from everyone and not being able to fix anything, and even his hoarder tendencies, it's just really wholesome to see him and Bob have this sort of adult man relationship. They're just friends, and they're both awkward people that are awkwardly going to show their friendship. But Bob does care about his best customer, and this was an episode that absolutely needed to happen. Because every time I want to revisit this episode, I always think it's way later in the show than it is, but no, right kind of out of the gate, we're getting this kind of introspection. Friends with Burger Fits is an Ice Vice escaping 9 out of 10. 10 out of 10. Best episode. And you know what? I'm conflicted, because I'd love if this was the Halloween episode of the season. Now granted, wouldn't make a ton of sense, but it would be fun. The fish odors are throwing a festival and decide to do a running of the turkeys, except they got all kinds of birds, not just turkeys, and they can't really establish a pecking order, so the birds go crazy and terrorize the city. Bob is at home, boycotting doing anything that isn't the traditional Thanksgiving and getting absolutely blasted, while Linda and the kids have to try and escape the feathery menaces. From Mickey being a fantastic carny to the grocery store scene, Dawn of the Peck is easily one of my favorite episodes of the show of all time. Now, is it a Thanksgiving episode? In the same ways things like Thanksgiving or Black Friday are. Thanksgiving horror is a very under-celebrated subgenre. And yet, Bob's Burgers manages to give you a zombie/creature drunken double feature because they know those kinds of Thanksgiving movies. Because they know the elements that make them work so well. Your Thanksgivings with Patrick Dempsey, your Pilgrims, that dumb Thanksgiving lore, much like Christmas horror. You have to camp it up just enough to keep people's attention. And it's much like Mall and Royal Crackers being a parody of shopping mall horror movies. Even more camp. This episode was genuinely sculpted with love, has some of the best performances of the entire show, and I love Drunk Bob. He's the best. This is an episode of Bob's Burgers I revisit time and time again, and honestly one I'll absolutely watch every Thanksgiving because it's just that good. I mean, it's got a stacked cast, brilliant jokes, regular-sized Rudy, and that holiday sense of unity that really brings it all home. And it's a testament to the powerhouses you have as regular people on the cast. This isn't a special guest star episode of Bob's Burgers, but it's got Kevin Kline, Bill Hader, Zach Galifianakis, it's got Sarah Silverman, Laura Silverman, and all the other big names that are already attached to the show. It's just something truly special. Dawn of the Peck is a gobbled up and pack leading 10 out of 10. Bob is in a local burger cooking competition hosted by Chuck, the local broadcaster, where he faces off against Jimmy Pesto and celebrity chef Skip Maruch, played by Silicon Valley superstar Kumail Nanjiani. Bob forgot his black garlic for his burger, and so Gene has to fight his impulses to be weird and distracted and go and get Bob's black garlic before the time is up. The kids end up getting into a fight with a spice shop owner after Gene ruins Bob's black garlic and they have to replace it. Fun fact, this would actually be the first appearance of vocal and comedic wonder legend Andy Daly in the show. You know, Memphis Stormfront and American Dad and Ron Dennison in Royal Crackers, two equally great shows. Yeah, that's kind of the whole episode. Gene fighting to pay attention and help his dad, and Bob panicking as he tries his best, even having Linda suggest that putting Gene in charge of his most crucial element is kinda self-sabotaging in a way. It's a bit of a toss-up. Bob gets the black garlic, gets it on the burger, and loses to Skip, who actually loves Bob's Burger and spreads the word about his restaurant. On the one hand, it's great to see Bob competing and getting the respect of other cooks in the area. On the other, it's a Gene episode focused entirely around Gene being Gene. Don't like Gene? It's going to be a rough watch. It's perfectly fine overall. The spice shop owner really helps keep the tempo, and much like in Archer, I wish Kumail Nanjiani just had a chance to do more. He just feels very limited. While we will get more of Skip later on, it's again just not enough. Give him more. If you're going to give Aziz Ansari so many times to play Daryl, give Kumail Nanjiani more to do with Skip. That's all I'm saying. It just feels really limited, and Chuck just doesn't seem to fit in the episode, which is coming from a guy that genuinely loves Thomas Lennon in anything. It just feels kinda overdone, especially following Family Fracas. Best burger is a medium rare, yet under-seasoned 8 out of 10. It's the Christmas episode that everyone's been waiting for! We get to meet Bob's dad, Bob! Big Bob would actually be played by the mickiest man on the cast, Bill Hader. They go to Big Bob's diner where we actually see his regulars, Max, played by Jordan Peele, and Henry, played by special guest and TV legend, Carl Reiner, who, for those keeping track at home, was also Tilly's boyfriend in King of the Hill, and in an episode of The Cleveland Show. And all that is way more interesting than the B story of the kids go into the diner's basement and try and build the best Christmas present for their grandpa, with Gene taking a bean bath. The Bobs compete over their burgers, and when Bob Jr. clenches the Henry vote, his dad walks off broken to line dance. Bob needs an intervention from a gay bar operating Santa, who takes him over to the bar to make up with his dad. His dad had held on to the first review Bob's Burgers ever got. He was gruff and awkward, but he does love Bob in his own way. He just doesn't know how to express it after Bob's mom passed, which really puts how Bob grew up in perspective. Bob was always at the restaurant because it was just him and his dad. Thanksgiving is so important to him because he has the family he didn't have growing up. For once, we actually get to really look into Bob's past and appreciate what he did and what his dad did. He earned his dad's respect, and while his dad always wanted to run the diner as the two of them, he still respected that his son had to go out and do his own thing. They love each other, they just don't know how to show it. We even saw that earlier in the season with Bob not knowing how to really be friends with Teddy. And by the end, when they're looking at Linda and the kids stepping up to run the diner, Big Bob tells Bob he's got a great family. It's a wonderful Christmas episode that really captures the reason for the season. And Nick Offerman is great in it. He shows up as the bar owner, and that's wonderful. But there's just this genuine emotional core that gives an incredibly satisfying conclusion to this episode and makes it stand out. The kids are honestly the one thing that takes away from the episode, since you just want more of Bob and his dad, but you can't exclude them from a Christmas episode. It just feels weird. Just feels like their scenes could have been shorter overall. Again, didn't need Gene's bean bath. Father of the Bob is a line dancing, scandal watching 9 out of 10. Tina has to find a mole in her Thunder Girls troupe that's been reporting their sales tactics to another troupe and always getting the jump on them. Tina enlists Louise's help, and they even infiltrate the other troupe to get to the bottom of the mystery. Oh, and Linda goes blonde after the kids point out her grays. She then becomes a stereotypical dumb blonde. Ha 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 ha. Comedy. Fun fact, this would be the first appearance of two very frequent guest stars. Sarah Baker, who plays Rena, would also play Miss Selvo throughout the series, and Betsy Sidaro, who plays Patty, would also show up as a collection of characters throughout the series. Neat. Wowee. Now that is not fair. This is honestly an incredibly strong Louise and Tina episode, and you can really see it deep down they do have a mutual respect and love for each other. Tina isn't helpless and she's really starting to come into her own. At the end of the day, still very obviously Tina, but what can you do? The B story is just so forgettable. It's absolutely believable that Linda would start acting, like a dumb blonde because she just does that. We even saw that back in the Psychic episode where she was just 100% committed right out the gate to being able to see a plane that no one else could see. It's a blessing and a curse. I will at least say this. Everyone is still acting like you would expect them to. No one has been Flanderized yet. These are still very much the Belchers you know and love, and I appreciate that they don't twist their characters to make them fit in an episode and even have that be part of the resolution. This is how the Belchers are gonna handle those stereotypical sitcom moments. It matters. It's very, very minute, but when you're manipulating tropes like that, it matters. Tina Taylor's Soldier Spy is an old man endorsed 7 out of 10. Get it? Because Gary Oldman is an actor that's in and here we are. It's our first Tina as a hall monitor episode. Yep, first of multiple. And it's actually kind of great. Yeah, no, it's not bad. Tina's a hall monitor striving to get the big promotion, and her hall protege Rudy is learning all about Tina's unwavering belief in the rules. She can't break the rules no matter what. So when she has to escort Zeke to the principal's office and he manages to escape, she starts lying and ducking and weaving to get him back before anyone suspects anything. And that's honestly one of the huge strengths of the episode. It's not about some kid we've never seen before. It's about Zeke. Zeke is arguably the nicest member of that friend group. Tammy, Jocelyn, kind of the worst. Jocelyn is at least funny and does have some heart. Jimmy Jr., sliding scale tolerability. But Zeke? He's pretty dang consistent, all things considered. You always know what you're gonna get with Zeke, and he's honest almost to a fault. That isn't just told to you, you're shown it every time he's shown up. Zeke wanted to borrow the mascot outfit and go and dance at his grandma's retirement home. He got rejected and he just wants to entertain his grandma. Tina doesn't believe him at first, but sure enough, he was telling the truth the entire time. You even have Zeke dancing at the end of the episode in the mascot costume. Tina has slowly bent more and more rules as time has gone on, while still pretending that she needs order all the time. She sort of picks and chooses what she wants to follow, and those flaws are what make her a realized character, and it really shines here. This is easily one of the strongest Tina episodes of the show, a great insight into Zeke, and really just humanizes him to the nines. I don't know, I always appreciate who Zeke was, and he just feels so properly realized here. He's not some bully caricature. He's a kid whose family moves around a lot and he loves his friends and his family, and he's gonna be rough, but he's a good kid deep down. And that kind of depth in a character matters when coming up at 9 is greased up deaf guy discovering Heelys for the first time, and he's glad to be back, America. When before you have the most radioactive nuclear family in all of Springfield, and after you have the quirks down in Quahog, it's actually a really smart move to play to those more normal, just sort of almost dull ideas and elevate them to make them a more introspective episode. And all of this isn't even getting into the B story that's also fantastic. Linda wants to hang up napkin art around the restaurant so everyone starts drawing, and Bob is just the worst. He even has to take art classes with Edith to get better, and it's just such a dumb day at the restaurant story. He wants to be a better artist just so that he can be better at that activity of the week. That's just so on brand, and I really kind of love that if you have a school-focused A story, it usually lets the adults be dumb in the restaurant in the B story, and it's a pretty perfect formula. Midday Run is a surprisingly honest 10 out of 10. Teddy starts brewing beer, and he and Bob decide to sell it out of the restaurant even though they don't have a liquor license and have to keep it under the table and sneak at Hugo and Ron's investigation. It's fun and dumb and works great. What's the A story? Oh, the kids decide to enter a go-kart league and get a go-kart from Critter and Mudflap to compete with Louise hogging the go-kart and deciding to be the sole driver of it. Fun fact, Bryce, played by Joe Latrulio, is back in the episode, so it's another Reno 911 reunion, so that's, neat. Sasha, a King's Head Island elite kid played by John Daly of American Dad fame, enlists Tina to drive for their team, and oh look, the sisters are competing, and Louise learns to share while Tina helps her sister win. Aww. It's predictable and perfectly fine. I like that Teddy and Bob are doing more stuff together, but the episode as a whole is just sort of there. The jokes are fine, the stories are fine, it's really just fine across the board, and that's kind of the appeal of the show. No matter what episode, outside of like one or two that I'll get into, even at their worst, these episodes are watchable. A weak obsBurgers episode still at least has some creativity and a baseline of quality assurance attached to it, which shows the passion that's still being put into the show after 15 seasons. Here, they're still trying to perfect their style, so yeah, you're gonna have some perfectly episodes while that happens, and that's okay. If it gives us more to work with, I'll take it. And this season is very much a peaks and valleys season. You're gonna have a lot of really great episodes and a lot of episodes that are just sort of there. Squeak Easy Rider is a push to the finish. 6 out of 10. Oh good, a Logan and Cynthia episode. Yay! Bob can't get into the community garden ran by Cynthia, so he agrees to hire Logan part-time to help him get into a good college. So, Logan and Louise fight in the restaurant while Bob lives his best gardening self, singing to his plants as everyone awkwardly watches. Love seeing Bob happy and really enjoying himself. He's so passionate at the end of the day, and you really do want him to succeed. Oh, and Louise is utterly miserable and wants Logan out, Linda joining in when Cynthia refuses to leave, so they're just doing anything and everything to make both of them miserable. Yay. Again, it's an episode that's just sorta there. There are some positives with Bob being into gardening, but otherwise the episode just drones on and on and on. No, I don't care what Tina asks him about how high school boys are. It's never funny enough to justify taking so much time to focus on Logan. Oh my god, it is painful. It is genuinely painful whenever I see a Logan story because he's just the worst. Dermot and the Venture Brothers, that is a real teen boy. Logan, I don't know who he is. He's just awful. Like the episode felt surprisingly flat, like just an honest and true filler Logan story as an excuse to get Bob in the garden. Everything around the gardening segments just feels so arbitrary and unnecessary. You could have just as easily had him breaking into song and having him kicked out for that. You didn't need the Logan and Cynthia element, and it doesn't really do anything for the episode as a whole. It's just perfectly fine. Good song though. Late Afternoon in the Garden of Bob and Louise is a bean sprout serenading. 6 out of 10. It's the Valentine's Day episode, and probably like my second least favorite Valentine's Day episode ever. Yay! Tina and Daryl pretend to be dating so that Daryl can look mature and romantic in front of his crush and Tina can get tutoring for math. But Tina warns Daryl not to actually fall for her, otherwise it might ruin their plan. Wanna guess what happens? Yeah, Tina falls for Daryl and tries to sabotage their plan because she got so swept up in her own fantasy. It's already weird with it being Tina and Daryl, and then it just gets more and more awkward the more it goes on. Which, there are good awkward Tina episodes. This is just not it. It's just, it's so exhausting. I'll be honest, I don't really like Daryl all that much. I think he kind of outstays his welcome. Granted, it's also just that whiny voice Aziz Ansari does for the character, and I'm sure that's a personal opinion. Daryl's just not for me, so to have an entire episode about Daryl, it's gotta be good. And there are episodes later in the show that do handle Daryl well. This one just doesn't. The B story for the episode, though? Linda came up with 7 days of fun Valentine's Day activities for her and Bob to do. If this B story didn't exist that culminates in Bob doing a striptease where everyone can see, the episode as a whole would just not be worth watching. Daryl's already pretty low on my list of entertaining recurring characters. He exists to complain and be smart, and that's about it. But Bob and Linda genuinely love each other and just struggle to effectively show it. Linda has a lot of ideas that are kinda great in concept, but do sort of struggle in execution. But Bob is willing to do however many days of Valentine's activities if it means he gets to spend time with his wife and it really makes their marriage shine, and is a great example of a realistic couple just trying to be affectionate with each other. I do at least appreciate that. Can't Buy Me Math, though, is a secret item locating 6 out of 10. It's the big race for class president. Now, I think we can all agree this season the peaks have never been higher and the valleys have never been lower. There's a lot of fluctuation, and this episode is a prime example of that. It's Jimmy Pesto Jr. versus Henry in the school-wide smackdown. However, Millie decides to run and starts outperforming everyone, determined to force Louise to be her friend. Louise joins Jimmy Jr.'s campaign and runs it into the ground in an attempt to stop Millie, and Millie yells about her diabolical scheme in front of the school and promptly gets voted out. All orchestrated by the chess-loving mastermind, Henry. Legitimately a gorgeous A story that is one of the strongest of the entire show, bar none. Love everything about it. Millie is super creepy, Henry is severely underrated, and everything just sings. Ha. And if the episode was just that A story, it would be great. But it's got a B story, and that B story takes this up to an entirely other level. Bob buys an expensive Japanese chef's knife delicately crafted with the art of folding steel. He starts showing off how impressive his incredible knife is, and Teddy starts to brag about how great his hammer is, so the two begin to compete. Which would win, knife or hammer? Now look, there are perfect animated scenes that honestly make life worth living to me. And one of those scenes is when Teddy throws the knife down on the counter and just starts smashing it with his hammer. Just going at it as hard as humanly possible. And it's amazing. The end song that Teddy sings is perfect. It is a concerto of angels singing on high that they have not lost their edge at all this season. This is where the spirit of obsBurgers shines. This is art. Transcendent beauty on high. A handyman just hammering the ever-loving crap out of a $300 knife. It's absurd, it's real, it's genius. The Militan Candidate is a wonder-filled 10 out of 10. It's an anthology episode. Wait. It's a Gale-focused anthology episode. Peaks and valleys, people. Peaks and valleys. The first story is Gene's country music ballad of Joe, Gene, and Gale. Get it? Joe, Gene, Jolene, That's the episode as a whole. The second story? Oh, it's a Little Women thing with all the Belchers. Isn't that fun? The third one? Romance, Game of Thrones, but cats instead of dragons. Isn't that dynamic and cool? Can you tell that that's Louise's story and it feels super original? If you like the anthology episodes, I am so happy you can appreciate the beauty of a sunrise. But every time I see one of these things coming through, I scream into the void. It is so rare for an anthology episode of any show to actually serve any amount of purpose. I don't know. We've moved a long way from human flesh, and these anthologies just sort of show we're gonna keep moving away from that exceptionally dark comedy of the earlier season. They'll still be quirky and reference Game of Thrones in a weird way, but it's not gonna do more than that. And it's like, the anthologies aren't bad, I guess. They're just not good either, and none really justify themselves. Oh, sure, the kids aren't grounded now because they came up with creative ideas. Haha. I guess when Linda got injured and they got grounded, that was kind of funny, but overall, it's just sort of there. It's a no from me. The Gale Tales is a cat turd thrown sitting 5 out of 10. Bob and Jean go to get a refund from a drone salesman when Bob's drone breaks on the very first flight. I know it's a remote helicopter, but it's the drone episode. While Bob and Jean are living their best high-flying adventure, Linda and Louise help Tina fake it till she makes it, reviewing Call of the Wild for her book report that she has to present in front of the class. I actually really enjoy the Bob and Jean adventure where we also get the return of Dana Snyder. Granted, both stories do drag out and the whole episode could probably be 3 minutes shorter and absolutely sing, but the model shop parts are fantastic, and Tina just learning how to lie better is terrific. There's just a lot of nothing back and forth that go nowhere, which is so disappointing because this episode has some of the best jokes in the season. The end bits with Tina's presentation are honestly fantastic. It's not an episode I revisit a ton, but it is really and truly solid. You get a good Crazy Bob story where he talks about just having righteousness on his side and how righteous he is for wanting his refund, and actually has to be talked down by Jean of all people. While Linda isn't helping Tina focus or anything, but rather lie more effectively. I love that Linda and Bob are flawed but still loving and genuinely want to help as best they can. They're not putting watermelons packed with explosives in their kids' laps and then running out, but they're also not putting their hand on their shoulder as the sun sets, telling them that making the right choice isn't always the easy choice. Now go get that fishing rod and let's wash up before Ma has dinner on. It's just very much a good balance in between. They're just weird normal parents going all in on being weird, normal, and supportive to a fault. Little Hard Dad is a drone destroying, inner beast unleashing 8 out of 10. Louise is chinchilla sitting while Tina does her first paid babysitting gig on Bob and Linda's date night. Yep. Louise, of course, only watching the chinchilla as a way to get at Wayne, who usually watches the chinchilla. Wayne would be played by Andy Richter. Oh no, the chinchilla got out and got picked up by Jonas, the kid who worked at Reggie's back in Uncle Teddy, and the kids have to go around town trying to get the chinchilla back, and wacky hijinks ensue. Meanwhile, Linda and Bob go to trivia night at a bar for their date night. Peaks and valleys. I hate Wayne. Andy Richter is great at playing annoying characters and, yeah, succeeds at making Wayne very, very annoying. And when you have him going around with the kids, yeah, it bogs the episode as a whole down. Did you care about Jonas? No? Well, here's more of him. It just doesn't work. If you like kid adventures that are like the adventures in babysitting, congrats, this episode is for you. Otherwise, the Bob and Linda story is fine, but predictable. I don't know. Nothing in the episode really stuck the landing and just seems to get by with just as much forward momentum as humanly possible. Oh look, a heartfelt moment at the end of the night where Louise gives Wayne the chinchilla he's bonded with, even though the chinchilla likes her more. Aww. Just never really feels earned. None of it feels worth it. It just feels dragged out and empty. Adventures in Chinchilla Sitting is a dust bath enjoying 6 out of 10. The kids have weakened attention when they could be enjoying the Cotton Candy Festival. And so Mr. Frond has all the kids in detention compete to leave early by doing a school-based Project Runway. You know what? Seeing Mr. Frond run around and try to make a fashion show a thing is just so Frond in the Frondiest and best way. And huge kudos to Dave Herman for really trying with every character he plays in obsBurgers. And he does a lot of them. He has brought Mr. Frond to life in a way really only he could, and he makes him that nasally, chaotic guidance counselor that really, really shines. And he's also Mr. Bronca. Like, he plays so many characters in this episode alone. Like, make no mistake, I don't dislike this episode at all. Tammy is still the complete and utter worst, but you know what? It works in the context of the episode. And the B story? Bob and Linda are positive the magazines a girl is selling door to door are a scam, and they try and get her to understand Turtle Camp isn't real until her boss comes in to shake them down. That feels like a season 1 B story if I've ever seen one, and I kinda love it. And you know who the girl is voiced by? Jenny Slate. Again, Tammy is the worst, but that's because Jenny Slate is so good at making her the worst. The voice talent sells the show, and this episode is a perfect example of it. No special guests, no extra angles, just a school and a restaurant story. It's one of the most basic episodes of the season, and arguably one of the strongest because of it. The Runaway Club is a coup-surviving, fall-fashionable 9 out of 10. Finish strong. Gene gets a band together with himself, Tina, Louise, Rudy, Daryl, and Peter Pescadero, and they practice during lunch to become the next big musical thing. Yep. Oh no, Gene knows nothing about music and gets kicked out of the band and wants to give up music forever because of it. Because, he didn't bother to learn anything about music, even though he's so passionate for it. Don't worry, he gets his passion for music back by the end of the episode. We'll have a return to normal no matter what. The B story? Linda has pit rash and has to let her pits breathe in the restaurant. Ha ha ha. It's nothing. This, I would say, is the weakest episode of the season and one of the worst of the series. Again, compared to everything else I have watched, still not completely and utterly horrible, but definitely not an episode I want to revisit any amount of times. I would be genuinely shocked and appalled if anyone said their favorite episode of the series was the Itty Bitty Ditty Committee, because there's even other episodes that do this idea, but better, later in the show. This episode just feels like an afterthought that never really goes anywhere. Now, is it as bad as Everybody in the Family Gets Worms? I don't think so, but it's close. The Itty Bitty Ditty Committee is a birthday jamming, pit airing 5 out of 10. Peaks and valleys, gang, peaks and valleys. And honestly, it's all uphill from here. It's Linda's birthday, and Bob is working to make the best mayo-based home spa day he can, and needs to get Linda out of the house so she gets sent grocery shopping. She drives past a chalk festival, and when she gets boxed in the grocery parking lot, she goes on an adventure, with Bob having to go around town trying to find his wife. It's a Linda episode. The subject of the episode is just Linda, and it's honestly fantastic. Linda feels like her birthday just shows she's getting older and she doesn't want to celebrate it. Meanwhile, Bob is going all around town doing the things Linda does with the kids to try and figure out where she could be. He's petting puppies with Louise, going to find the best places to drop trow, and gaining a new appreciation for his wife and best friend in the process. It's a celebration of Linda as a person, as a wife, as a mother, and really does show that she does a lot for the family even if they don't realize it. And it's not like she's being neglected. Bob sent her out so he could work more on her surprise. It wasn't an afterthought. He was going all out on trying to make it the best birthday he could for her and really blow her away. He didn't forget, he didn't rush to get something at the last minute and try and fix things after the fact by sending her to a mental ward or anything. He loves her, and she loves her family, and that's never questioned this episode, which is so refreshing and so genuinely satisfying. obsBurgers is weird but normal, and yeah, after a point, birthdays can feel like you're just another year older, but this celebrates the impact you have on those around you. Linda, by the end of the episode, is bolting through a chalk festival to get home, and her family is excited to see her again. That's perfect. This is perfect obsBurgers. The jokes are still great, Ginger is still unseen, and Eat Spray Linda is an egg-based pour opening 10 out of 10. Teddy has a crush on a homeowner he works for and asks the Belchers to go up and just bring some stuff inside. However, once they're there, they end up hanging out in the mansion as a horrible storm rolls through and traps them, Teddy, and the homeowner Helen in the house, as Linda starts to think Helen is something of a Black Widow. Helen would be played by professional giant bird, Caitlin Olsen. So yeah, they think Helen took out her previous husband and that they're trapped with a monster while Bob plays pool, and Teddy keeps trying to impress Helen by helping out. And it's honestly great that Teddy really likes someone and is actively pursuing them. He's all in no matter what, and seeing how he's developed this season, you really want him to have a win. He deserves to be happy. It's got suspense, great jokes, and sweet D. There's a lot to love. Is it the absolute masterclass that was the earlier episode? No, absolutely not. Is it still fun with a very believable, somewhat overused trope episode idea? Of course! Every episode isn't a home run, and that's fine. It's not something as peak as Royal Crackers. The episode is fun, good, dumb Bob's Burgers that by the time the sun is coming out and the skies are clearing, you know Helen didn't do anything, and it's just another of those kooky Belcher adventures that ends up being perfectly rewatchable if you ever catch a rerun of it. It never tries to overcomplicate itself, it plays out exactly how you think it would, and while it does sort of set up and play with that trend of like, oh, is something gonna happen? Oh, you never know. No, just kidding, it's Bob's Burgers, we're TV PG now. Like, it doesn't, it's a little disappointing, I guess, but if it did actually do anything with the murder house, it would not be Bob's Burgers at that point. Housetrap is a bird-loving 8 out of 10. Bob and Louise are huge fans of the classic Wandering Samurai and Daughter story, Hawk and Chick, a very obvious reference to the manga, film, and TV series Lone Wolf and Cub. They're at a market and think they recognize the actor that plays Hawk and start to tail him back to his home, where he reveals that he and his daughter haven't talked in years, and Bob and Louise are determined to change that by organizing a special one-night midnight showing of Hawk and Chick to reunite the two. Hawk is played by Kojima, who is voiced by Kisuke Hoashi, who would also show up in more episodes later in the series. Chick is played by Yuki, who's voiced by Tacoma FD and Avenue 5's Suzy Nakamura. They're both fantastic and really highlight a truly spectacular episode. Bob and Louise are going around trying to put together this show just because the movies have helped them bond. They're not doing it to get paid or anything. They're just genuinely trying to do a good thing for the people that have impacted their lives so much. And even if it's awkward and they're bringing Yuki in with a cardboard barrier, they're trying to help, and sure enough, Hawk and Chick have that heartfelt reunion while Bob and Louise are live dubbing a movie. The fact that they made it a Lone Wolf and Cub reference, again, just shows they don't care if you don't get the reference. The reference is for them. And like, Wolf and Cub is the story of a father samurai and his daughter. It's a perfect idea for what they're going for and plays into all the Miyazaki love we've seen in the series, all the extra, deep cut, noir ideas and samurai ideas that show that there is creativity still at work. There aren't as many jokes this episode, but the emotional core to the episode really pulls you along and makes it stand out as one of the best episodes of the season. Hawk and Chick is a high-flying, broccoli monster slaying 10 out of 10. And here we are, the season finale. With Mr. Fishodor raising the rent, Bob gets the neighborhood together to try and go on a rent strike to force Mr. Fishodor to reconsider. Even Jimmy Pesto is on board. That's how important it is. That is until Mr. Fishodor proposes a water balloon fight. Last one standing doesn't have their rent increased. Bob tries to get everyone to put down their balloons and fight together so they can all win. Bob is actively trying to help everyone, even if they're willing to sell him out at a moment's notice. Also, the shop owner from Bob Rusty Gentle Mannequins finally has a name. It's Sal, which I need to say, Fred Stoller is great as Sal and really brings an extra level to the show. I mean, he was in Home Movies and Dr. Katz. He knows what he's doing in this writing style. And that's the episode. The Belchers fighting everyone else to try and save their family while Linda's looking for a reason to lose so she can go to the patio with the snacks. Gene and Louise find Felix in a giant treehouse and more balloons so they can provide covering fire. There's not even an intro to the episode. You're thrown right into it. And honestly, I thought Hawk and Chick would make a great season finale episode, but then this is the actual season finale? Hawk and Chick never stood a chance. This is a celebration of the main crew we've seen all season and gives you a chance to just come down and end the season on one of the strongest episodes. Bob ends up apologizing to Mr. Fishodor for not just coming to him, and hey, no rent increases for a couple years. Whoa, what a kind landlord. That hurt to say. Is it as good as Warforce? No, but it was never trying to be. It's easily the second strongest season finale we've gotten so far, and that's saying something. Like, the concept of this episode wouldn't make sense as a two-parter. They used their time super efficiently and just jam-packed the episode with some absolutely fantastic jokes to make it just fly by. It never stalls, it never feels like a scene is being dragged on for too long, and this was honestly the most refreshing season finale I've seen in a minute. The Odor Games is an over-the-shoulder, boulder-holder bombarding 10 out of 10. And there we have it, that's season 5. Anything you think I was right on? Wrong on? What was your favorite episode? Least favorite? Let me know in the comments below. And if you liked what you saw, consider liking, subscribing, and telling your friends we're out here. Season 5 did have more peaks and valleys than the last season, but when the episodes were peaks, they were some of the best episodes the show has had up to this point. And the valleys didn't make me want to claw my eyes out, so overall, a win. By season 5, most shows are experiencing some sort of shift, and here we're seeing the shift into a more introspective series as time goes on. But is it able to maintain the momentum as we head into the last season before we hit the 100th episode benchmark? Well, next season we'll get Ghost Graffiti and Adhesive Adventure and so much more, so don't kick bricks when we talk about season 6. Kicking bricks would hurt, friends. It would hurt a lot. Anyway, that's going to do it for us here at the Lecture Hall, and if you like what you saw and want to support the channel, consider joining our Patreon or membership programs today. $2 a month and you get special polls, posts, and even your name on this fancy list. Woo! Thank you all so much for watching, and remember, you matter, keep fighting, and know that no matter what, I believe in you. Things will get better. A rising tide lifts all ships, and I can feel one hell of a wave coming. Goodbye, everybody, and I'll see you all next time.